Why has the trans ideology become so pervasive in society, seemingly over the last 5 years? Now, the trans ideology is really powerful. Now, you might think, what the fuck does that mean? As an ideology, as a sort of social virus, as a contagion, it's extremely powerful. Meaning that if you speak against it, right, you're doing so despite fear of social ostracization. So let me put it to you this way: there are two groups of people. They're the people who accept and purport the trans ideology, and there are the people who disagree with it. If you accept it, there isn't anything the other side can really call you. They can call you woke. They can call you stupid. It's kind of like luft. It's air. It doesn't really. It's not really that much of an insult. Whereas if you're on the other side, they can call you like a hateful person. You know, you're a hateful person. You're like, you have this transphobia. You're like a kind of just really hateful, bad person. They make a comparison that you're like a racist. You're like a Nazi. You're like a slave owner. Because in the past, bigotry, like Nazis like hated Jews. They had this pure hatred of them. That kind of hatred attitude is the same thing that they kind of think that you are. They can finger point at you if you say, I don't think a trans woman is a woman. They will be like, oh, you're, so that means you're like the Nazis. You're like a hateful. You have this like irrational hatred towards this group, right? So group number one, if you're woke, there's no real consequence to you. The other side can't really call you anything. Whereas if you're on this side, they can really call you these horrible things. And so, you know, weak people will bend to this ideology. They'll, say the ideology comes their way, they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to be socially ostracized. They just want to be at peace. And so they will accept this ideology. They will accept that trans women are women and all of this bullshit because they're scared. They have social fear. Okay, so that makes the trans ideology really powerful because the ideology can spread, because if you don't accept it, it's going to be really painful for you. Whereas if you accept it, it's easy. Now, in Darwinism, right? Darwin's theory of natural selection, in my opinion, it's the best scientific theory ever fucking thought of, including all the physics theories. I think evolution by natural selection is one of the best scientific theories ever. In natural selection, right? Say a human being has an incredible immune system. Imagine the immune system to be like a shield around you, right? Let's say a human being's born and it's a guy and it has an incredible immune system. When he passes on that immune system to his kid, that kid is going to have that shield as well. That kid's going to be more likely to survive and reproduce himself. And then he reproduces more. And then over time, in that population, more and more kids are going to have this shield around them because the ones that don't have the shield die off or have a high probability of dying off. And over time, they die off. Now, the gender ideology is really, really powerful because the gender ideology has this shield around it. Do you see what I'm saying? And the shield is, if you talk against it, the shield is going to point at you and be like, you're a bad person, you're a bad person, you're a bad person. And so the masses of people in the world, the ordinary folk, the common people, they are more likely to accept this because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to be socially ostracized. Social ostracization is a huge natural fear. Like in school and in the workplace and in life, the worst thing we want as a human being like loneliness and being without friends and being without people who support you is a terrible feeling. And so if you kind of are against this ideology, you're at risk of losing friends. You're at risk of society kind of shunning you. And that's a really, really visceral, human, natural fear, right? Now, this goes even further. You think, okay, cool, that explains it. The gender ideology is a powerful ideology. And I'm not saying it's good, it's powerful. It's convincing on an emotional limbic level. Because it's very threatening if you don't accept it. Now, when this gets into corporate world as well, we see on like Instagram and Twitter and all of this, like, I don't use that shit, but I've seen it, where like, it's like, oh, if you don't accept the gender, like it's got, all the corporations have the gender ideology shit in their fucking thing, the trans flag and everything. On the football, if you see the football, it has like the gay flag, and you have the video of Jamie Vardy like smashing the gay corner flag. I was in Manchester a few months ago and there was just this giant like gay, like trans flag and everything. It's everywhere in corporations because if you're a corporation, right, corporations are driven for maximum profit, right? Now you might think, oh, but corporations have ethics. Yeah, they have ethics so that they can get profit, so that they can just The only reason why corporations have ethics isn't because there's someone who's really caring at the corporation. It's that they have to abide by laws. They have to do shit which conforms with society so that people don't hate the brand, pretty much. And so to disagree with the trans stuff is corporate suicide, right? If you don't have pronouns in your bio, people kind of think, is he a hateful person? Is he one of those hateful people? There's doubt. So corporations are all accepting of this gender ideology bullshit, even though they don't believe it, because it's in interest of the corporation to get more profit, or at least to prevent the loss of profit. If there's a public scandal against one of these corporations, like, oh, this corporation is actually a hateful corporation, it doesn't accept gender ideology. If it doesn't accept the gender ideology, it's a hateful organisation. And that's terrible for the brand, and it's going to make them lose money. So now, corporations have this gender ideology, and we see it. This isn't my crackpot theory. We see it everywhere. At the company I'm joining, like it's going to be there. So then what happens next is, what does a corporation have? A fuckload of employees. All the employees now have to take on the gender ideology, because the threat now is, it isn't social ostracization, which is the threat of not accepting it before. Before, if you didn't accept this gender ideology and you're just out with your mates or out in society, people can socially ostracize you, which is terrible. Really, really, like, it's a visceral fear. And people like Trump and that have, the reason why we respect people like Trump, even though he's a bit of a fucking idiot, is because he's got the balls to actually say the truth despite the fear. Now, when it comes to corporations, another fear is added. So the first layer of fear was social ostracization. The second fear is the I dropped my phone. The second fear is the threat of losing your job, and the threat of your financial security being at risk, which is a really deep fear. Imagine like the risk of losing your job. If you're a person where if you lose your job you're fucked, you're going to put your pronouns in your bio. You're going to say trans women are women, just because you need to save your neck. You don't want any risk to your job. That means a lot. If you lose your job, that could be your fucking family, like not having food on the table. It could be just this big form of stress. So now people will accept gender ideology, and they'll believe it. The social contagion will spread to them, because if they don't accept it, there's a risk, however small, a risk to your job and your livelihood, however small. That's not a risk worth taking. Because if you lose your job, if you lose your money, you might not be able to pay your rent. And that's bad. You could get kicked out. Your family could be in trouble. That's a big fear. So now the employees begin to accept it. They become brainwashed as well. Because if they accept it, it's the safer move. If you accept it, you're going to be less likely to be fired from your job. You're going to have less HR disasters. So now you believe it as well. So this is how the ideology is so powerful. This is how it's seemingly spread out of nowhere. It's not spread because people believe it and people are retarded. It's because it's targeting people's fears. The fear of social ostracization in society, and the fear of losing your job in your corporation, in the corporate world, in the work career world. Imagine you're high up and you're earning a lot of money, and you say, and you're like saying, "Oh, trans women are men." The corporation could fire you for being hateful. That's going to fuck your life up. So this social contagion, it's spread. And you think about it at the start, right? With the whole racism thing, everyone was racist like fucking 50 years ago, right? Or 70 years ago, whatever. The reason why the anti-racism stuff spread is because if you were on the side of the racists, they can call you a Nazi, a hateful person, and you're going to look bad, right? Whereas if you're on the side of the non-racists, what are they going to call you? Oh, you're really accepting. Again, the insult doesn't really mean much. The insult that they can give, it doesn't really fucking, who gives a shit if they call me too accepting? If they call me hateful, I don't really like that. And then the gay thing happened where people are like, oh, you're be accepting of gays. If you're not accepting of gays, they can call you a Nazi. They can say you're a hateful person. If you are accepting of gays, what are they going to call you? What can the insult be? What, oh, you're really accepting of gays. There's not real an insult. So that's how this anti-racism stuff is spread. That's how this gay stuff is spread, and now the trans stuff is spread. And this is really, it's incredible how it's spread. But it makes sense, because most people will conform because they don't want to be looked bad, and they don't want to lose their fucking job. When it's spread into the corporate world, that's how like it really spreads. No one wants to lose their job. People want to conform. I just want to be okay. At the end of the day, people are out for themselves. They just want to be safe. They want to be secure. And if it means accepting a bullshit ideology, fuck it. They will do it. Their brains will accept it. I hope that's quite enlightening. This information is like social Darwinism. Awesome theory. Charles Darwin, one of the best scientists ever. Genius. Really interesting. I find it really interesting, even though it's terrible and it's infected society and it's fucking people up. You're going to marvel at how these things work.